Hi, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me. So in today's video, I want to revisit the subject of pressing plants, pressing faults. You'll have possibly seen, if you're a regular viewer, a previous video I did, which I'll put a link to here, about these Deutsche Grammophon original source records, which sound amazing. But I got two and they weren't perfect. This one particularly, the Sacre de Printemps, the Rite of Spring, was just peppered throughout with these tiny little ticks, sort of all over the soundstage. Really quiet, but continuous. I think I mentioned in the review something like 3 clicks every 15 seconds. It's quite often more than that. They're very quiet, but it was absolutely continuous, and it just destroyed the listening. So I got in touch with Deutsche Grammophon, and I think they responded kindly to my complaint, and as you can see here, we have a new copy, which I have I put into a fresh inner sleeve here. Let me just grab it out. I put this into a fresh inner sleeve, and it's a lot better. I will say it's still not perfect, but it's a lot better. And to be perfectly honest, I'm more than happy to keep this one and listen to this one. Now, this sort of noise, if you like, I can only imagine it's down to either poor quality vinyl, in so much as the vinyl has got tiny impurity, specks of impurities in it, or poor cleanliness at the pressing plant, such that the stamper, when it comes down, has got, and it must be tiny particles of dust, because these are the tiniest little specks. So I think it's more likely just pollution, in the air or in the plastic, microscopic, not visible to the naked eye at any rate, but it manifests itself with these tiny clicks. Now, as I mentioned in that video, these are pressed at Optimal pressing in Germany. Now, curiously, Optimal also do an awful lot of vinyl for an awful lot of people, but they also do Blue Note Classic series, and I've got about a dozen of those maybe, and I have had one problem with the Classic series, but only one. So, 1 in 12, I think is, it's obviously not perfect, but for me, I think that's kind of acceptable. With these Deutsche Grammophons, I had two initially. Both were less than perfect, the Stravinsky's especially so. And they replaced them both, and the replacements are fine. I won't say the replacements are perfect, because they're not. But they're a lot better. And frankly, if I'd got these first, I wouldn't be thinking twice about it. Okay, so I think there's two things here. We got to commend Deutsche Grammophon for their customer service, because they did replace these without any fuss whatsoever. But obviously the QC, and this is very important to realise this. It's the QC at Optimal, not the QC at Deutsche Grammophon, because what are Deutsche Grammophon going to do? They're going to take out every record and play them, because ultimately Optimal are the pressing company, and they are the ones that have produced a substandard product. Okay, so let me put that away. So that's comment on Optimal. Now, there is another pressing plant which, if you do searches online, you're sure to hear about it, and that pressing plant is GZ Media. Now, I don't catalogue my records by pressing plant, so it's when a problem record pops up, that's when I will, take note and note where it was pressed. And of course, my last video, which you may or may not have seen, I'll put a link up here, Tori Amos Diving Deep Live. The first record I bought of this was in fact the limited blue special edition. Hang on, where are we? This one here. And because it's blue vinyl, it's actually very, very, very difficult. And this is the trouble with blue and coloured vinyl, well, coloured vinyls in general and clear vinyl. It is actually very difficult to see obvious pressing defects. Now, I have downlighters in my listening room, 8 of them on the ceiling, and they give a good strong directional light, and you can actually, just by sort of holding this in the light and moving it around, you can actually see non-fill. Now, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know exactly what non-fill was. I knew what it was in theory, but I didn't know for 100% what it looked like, or whether it's what I'd been looking at. And in conversation with a viewer in the last few weeks, actually, he was describing it. I thought, okay, yeah, well, that's what I kind of suspected. So I'm going to show you some photos of non-fill, and it is without any question a defect in the pressing. And what it is when you've got you put a puck of vinyl, you put a puck of vinyl on the other label, like a sandwich, in your pressing machine, and then the top comes down and that squishes that out with heat and pressure. It squishes it out and it will go into all the little indentations, all the grooves, and press your record. Now, non-fill is where you've either got insufficient temperature or insufficient pressure, or maybe the plastic itself, the PVC, is too kind of viscous. Whatever the reason, this is, it's not for me to sort out, it's for the pressing plant to sort out. But it doesn't get up into all of the groove. Now, I can't really show you on this, but in under very strong light, you can see it's kind of peppered with tiny little specks of non-fill. Okay, but that was the worst issue with this first one, was basically that it had a, I'll call it a scratch, but it was a pressing defect on it, and I wanted to send it back and get a replacement. They said they can't replace it, so I went out and bought a black copy. And I'm just going to get onto that now. And this is that black copy. Now, let's take this out. Again, I don't think you're going to see, you're not going to see it here. But what I have done is I've taken a photo of the non-fill. I mean, I can see it's about here. So there's 2 copies of this that are less than perfect. Okay, so anyone who's seen my last video will know that I went back to toriamos.com and ordered another exclusive coloured vinyl pressing, which turned out to be the same as the initial light blue one. Unfortunately, I won't say it's perfect, but it was better than either of the other 2. And very interestingly to me, the sound quality of these 2, of the blue and the black vinyl, were completely different. It's the same pressing, it's the same cut, it's the same plates, if you like, cut by Miles Showell, and both pressed at GZ Media in Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, but they sound really quite different. So, there's just a sort of an illustration that GZ are, a bit sloppy in their production too, because that's so far, I bought 2 copies of these and there's 100% failure rate. The third copy, again, like with the Deutsche Grammophon, Stravinsky, It's not perfect, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, but it's acceptable to me. Okay, so I'm happy enough, and I'm keeping the third version. These two are going back. Now, you might be thinking, is this a new thing? Well, sadly, no, it's not. I don't know if any of you remember the video I did a little while ago talking about pressings and remasters and all the rest of it. And one of the records I had in there was I bought the Sade boxed set, which it turns out was remastered and cut by Miles Showell using the Abbey Road half-speed mastered process. Now, I had original pressings of Diamond Life, Promise, and Stronger Than Pride, the first three Sade albums. I didn't have an original pressing of this one, Love Deluxe. And that's kind of the main reason I bought the box set, to be honest, because this is one of my favourite albums, and it's quite expensive to buy it as an original. And so I got that box set, and the box set proved to be complete junk. It was, the sonic quality of these Miles Showell half-speed remasters is just, it's like all the life has gone. It's completely dead. So as a result, I just thought, I've got to get an original. So I went out and I bought this. Now, interestingly enough, if I just show you here, property of Sony Music. This is a demonstration copy, okay? Obviously, a second-hand one. I bought it second-hand. Sonically, this one absolutely runs rings around that Miles Showell remaster, and for that reason, I'm utterly happy with it. It's light and agile and uplifting and nimble and bounces along. There's a groove and it's just wonderful in terms of musical flow and everything else. The Miles Showell Abbey Road half-speed remastered version is just dead. It's like all the emotion has been sucked out of it, all the life. And, this is in really quite good nick. I would say this is VG Plus, generally, okay? There we are, side one. But if we go to side two, here we are. So, again, I'm not sure if you can see this, but we're looking just here by my thumbnail, my fingernail. I will put a photo of this up on screen now. But again, this is non-fill. And this is, when was this album? 1992. So this is not a new phenomenon. But this is non-fill. And what it looks like a scratch in line with the groove that actually kind of in width covers about 2 or 3 grooves in terms of revolutions round, okay? Now, even that there, which is quite long, quite severe, it manifests itself as a bit of quite nasty noise. I would say overlaying the music. It's not really behind the music. There's no way you won't hear it. And it was damn, this is really annoying. But the sound of the sound of this whole album is so wonderful compared with the reissue, that I just figured, look, I can put up with, for the sake of like no more than a second, and let's say it's repeated twice, and then it's gone. Okay, so it's obviously suboptimal, but I put up with it basically, rather than I'd rather have this album, the whole album, sounding absolutely beautiful with just 2 1-second aberrations, if you like, in it, than an album that I don't want to listen to because it sounds dire. So there's proof that non-fill isn't a new phenomenon. Now, I genuinely haven't found this particularly often in the old days. This is the only example I can think of that I've got. I mean, 1992 is hardly the old days, but I'm not aware of non-fill in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Although I've got plenty of dreadful pressings from those eras. Prestige in the late 50s used recycled vinyl that was, occasionally used recycled vinyl that was just appalling. But anyway, that's sort of an aside on non-fill. But let's get back to GZ. As I said, if you see this logo on any record, it's pressed at GZ Media, okay, in the Czech Republic. Now, this one here is probably the first that really stuck in my mind about GZ. Now, I've done a video on this, I think, some time ago, and it's a massive box set. I don't listen to, I've probably listened to it once all the way through, but what I do remember very clearly about this is that of those dozen albums, every single one was warped. Let me just see. Actually, there's 10 albums. There's 5 double albums. Every single one was warped. And again, this is pressed at GZ Media. So GZ's track record for me is sadly bottom of the pile. Optimal is, I would say, from my experience, above GZ, and then you sort of get into, you've got Palace and RTI and QRP, Paramount, all these other various labels, pressing plants around the world that mostly I would say good. But I do want to just point out that GZ, if it's not warped and it hasn't got a problem with like non-fill or other sort of pressing defects, I would say you've got to consider yourself quite lucky. Optimal is a curious one because, as I say, I have had one Blue Note Classic Series album, which, it was faulty. I took it back to the record shop, got another one. That was faulty too, same fault, it was warped. Took it back, got another one, faulty too. And when I say warped, it was quite a strong ripple that wouldn't flatten out. All these I'm able to flatten out with, I've got a record flattening machine, and they are able to flatten out well. On the subject of warps, there is one other situation that I'd like to mention, and that is the MOFI 1 steps, which are printed onto their SuperVinyl. I think the Craft Small Batch series uses the same vinyl. And I've only had one of those, and that was warped too. But basically, the SuperVinyls, as they were pressed at RTI, which would be the case of, until very recently, the MOFI 1 steps and also the Craft Small Batch series, by no means is it every disc, but it's got to be at least 30, maybe 40% of the discs that I've had have been warped. And this is kind of a dish warp. So on one side, you'll hardly notice it. On the other side, the record's kind of just hanging in space, sort of suspended on its, near its center hole, which is, again, it's not acceptable. It's far from optimal. But the trouble with those is I've been unsuccessful in managing to flatten them. I can get them flat, but I think the noise floor raises. So I would, MOFI SuperVinyls, quite cautious of those. I've only had one MOFI SuperVinyl LP pressed at their new in-house record pressing plant, and that seems to be fine, okay? But 1 out of 1 isn't much of a sample rate, okay? But as far as QRP, again, Paramount in Denver is the sort of, I think Dave Rawlings and Gillian Welch have got shares in it or were involved in it, I'm not sure. QRP obviously is another very notable pressing plant owned by Chad Casson of Acoustic Sounds and Analog Productions. I've probably bought 50 albums, 50 discs that is, in the last year, at least, pressed at QRP, and the tiniest flaws in maybe 1 or 2. Nothing that I would bother about. But it's like with the replacement Tori Amos and Stravinsky from Deutsche Grammophon there. I've got the replacements that are perfectly acceptable, but I'm not going to say they are absolutely perfect. But I am not the kind of guy that goes listening for defects. I will only note them if they become obtrusive, if you see what I mean, okay? If you really are that fussed about it, then, I think vinyl is probably not the medium for you. Go to CD, or of course, very much at the other end of the scale, tape, because you don't get pops and scratches and ticks on tape. Okay, so I think that's about where I want to leave this. I wanted to feed back about the Deutsche Grammophons. I think they've been very helpful, agreeing to replace them and sent out replacements in very quick time. To be fair, Tori Amos, they've said send these back, and in fact the black one came from Amazon and the blue one came from the Tori Amos store. So these will be going back, as soon as I've shot this video, to be honest. And I just think it's interesting to note which pressing plants are the ones that consistently fail in this respect. And all companies, all record labels, individual artists, if they publish themselves, I urge you to take note. And if you're giving any of these companies, or for that matter any company, if you're giving them your business, make sure that they are providing the quality that you would expect and your customers would expect, because whilst this isn't billed as an audiophile LP, it's still £40, which is not cheap. It's a double LP. These Deutsche Grammophons, they kind of are billed as audiophile LPs, and they're €55 a go. So for them to be noisy, and I'd say I've had 4 now, and I would say of the 4, only one of them was unacceptably noisy. Okay, that's still a 25% failure rate. And I do think it's worth mentioning about the MOFI SuperVinyl, which I found a good 40% of discs, probably 30 to 40%, are warped. And whilst with the Bob Dylan here, I was able to perfectly flatten those warps out. With the SuperVinyl, I've tried a few times. I won't bother attempting to flatten it. It's not as I say, I can flatten it, but not without audible side effects. Okay, so on that note, I'll say thank you once again very, very much for watching, for joining me, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again soon. Bye bye.